I think the key point is that today MPVs or MUVs, we'll club them together, it's a bigger segment than sedans. Who would have thought that?
Happy to see that there's buyer at every price point, right from a Triber to a Velfire. Exactly. Starting at about 6 lakh rupees price point to almost a crore.
MPV buyers are very value conscious. They are the ones, unlike SUV buyers, who might even shun a few features for low running costs and a good price.
With the designs getting better, with the interiors getting better, with the aesthetic feel getting better, I think a lot more first-time buyers may potentially look at that segment.
I am surprised no one else has done a sub 4 meter MPV. Hello, we are back for another episode of Deep Drive powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, on this week's episode, we are going to be talking about a segment that not many people notice or focus on. It is the MPV or the MUV segment. And we're going to be seeing how the segment has actually grown. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Hormazd, quietly the segment has grown into 10% of the overall passenger vehicle market.
And I think the key point is that today MPVs or MUVs, we'll club them together, it's a bigger segment than sedans.
Oh, yes.
Who would have thought that?
Absolutely.
From a segment which was, under 3-4% about 20 years back?
Absolutely. I think,
25 years back. Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Hormazd. And surprise, in a difficult market right now, wherein we are talking about slow growth rate and all, we still have models like Ertiga, Carens and Innova High Cross in waiting for some of the variants. And clearly the multitude of value that an MPV offers is what is resonating with more and more audience. And now reflecting on some numbers, before 2012, 2013, the MPV segment was largely Innova and it accounted for about 3.5-4% of the market. But then came Maruti Suzuki Ertiga in 2012, 2013. And within a year, the segment doubled.
I think typically when Maruti comes, it tends to, blow the segment apart like the Desire it did with the compact sedan segment.
Absolutely.
And I think the Ertiga really, I think it served the lower end of the market. It kind of, both the Innova and the Ertiga bookended the MPV segment.
Yes.
There were lots of products in between, but a lot of them failed, or almost all of them failed, which we'll come to later.
Yes. So till that time, we were, as users, relying on ladder-on frame MPVs, largely from Toyota. So with the Swift platform, Maruti decided to come out with a compact dimension MPV that gave you that, city
car-like
feel. And it was absolute value during the time that it was introduced. And it was just about $1.5 lakh jump up from Desire at that point in time. It just really fit very well into the upgrader space at that point in time.
You're right. And, I think for Maruti, the Ertiga was a real cash cow. Because if you see, it used a lot of common componentry with existing models. Dashboards were shared, with a Desire at that point. And it was... the engines, the 1.3 diesel really did well in that segment. I think they charge a premium of 1.5 lakhs over and above the Desire.
Right.
And clearly, I think, it had a lot of takers. I think the Ertiga, it really came into its own with the second generation Ertiga. Where I think it was our car of the year, actually, at that
2018, 2019.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah, I think, 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So, and clearly, it was a car which I felt the second gen Ertiga was designed by customer feedback. Just absolute customer feedback. It's like, engineers took a checklist and said, this is what was needed, this is what we should have had. And it really, in a way, was a perfect family car in that sense.
Absolutely.
Because, it even had the diesel, the short-lived 1.5 diesel, which have been an absolute perfect match because, MPVs and diesels, really, they go well together, diesel engines. Right. We've seen that in the past. The success of the Ertiga one was largely, the first gen was because of the 1.3 diesel. And I think even the 1.5 diesel, it really, just a few months it was on sale. We know why that 1.5 diesel went off abruptly with BS6. We've gone into that a lot. So I think it had ticked every box, the second gen Ertiga, and the third row was also that much more spacious. The ride was good,
Okay.
and it didn't have too many frills, to be honest, but I think it resonated with what MPV buyers want, which is practicality above everything else.
Yes.
And I think others have tried to come in by trying to outdo the Ertiga and even the Innova by giving lots of features. But I think, and the cost going up as a result. But I think MPV buyers are very value conscious. They are the ones, unlike SUV buyers, who might even shun a few features for low running costs and a good price.
An absolute value package, Hormaz. And like you mentioned, the engineers went down with a piece of paper wanting to bridge the gap. I remember they had increased the length of the vehicle by a 130 giving that third row space, which is critical for
crucial third row space.
Crucial third row space. Then we started seeing better interiors, better design from a design aesthetic perspective. Also, it elevated. And Hormaz, till that time from 2012 to 2018, I think Ertiga used to average around 55 to 60,000 units per annum. And then we saw the jump. And in a matter of just about a year and a half, I remember just before the COVID, Ertiga had done almost like 120, 130. And there, all the powertrains were helping. The CNG was helping, the diesel was helping, of course, till 2020 BS6 emission norm, diesel was there, petrol was helping. So, and it was catering to different set of buyers, and we know MPVs have a really strong acceptance in the fleet segment.
Exactly.
And Maruti did create a tour version of it.
Is it fair to say about 20-25% of MPV sales are all fleet?
Yes, absolutely right. And I think Toyota, they're kind of
rule the roost.
Absolutely. And they actually convince the fleet operator that this is the right vehicle for ferrying people, be it within city or outside city. It was just a default choice. And I think that aspect is what helped Ertiga to kind of cater to this large masses, which was looking at an affordable option.
Ketan, while the Ertiga has been a phenomenal success, I think, it's on the back of a lot of success Maruti has had in this segment. I mean, if you look at it, the most successful MPV of all time has been the Maruti Omni.
Right.
About almost 2 million units, 1.9 something over its entire, 30-year period. 30-year period. Then you even have the Maruti Eco, which has done fantastically well.
Absolutely. But they've had their share of failure as well with the Versa.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I think with the Versa, it was a bit too expensive. I think they made that mistake of trying to make MPVs upmarket.
Right.
I mean, today it would not be considered upmarket, but at that time, in that period, it was that much more expensive.
Having Abhishek and Amitabh.
Even the Bachchans couldn't convince people to buy it, because at the end of the day, it was all about practical. It was all about price. And at that time, when it came, people were a lot more cost conscious. Today, they've moved away from being cost conscious to value conscious. People are willing to spend if they see value. But that time, it was just absolutely the affordability factor. And honestly, the Ertiga for me it did 90-95% of what the Innova did at around 60% of the price.
Phenomenal. I mean, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, in fact, interesting you mentioned that, Hormazd. I think 2016 is when Toyota came out with the new gen or a significant facelift of Innova.
That's right.
And at that point in time, the prices shot up significantly.
Exactly.
I remember during those days, one of our industry friend telling me.
It came out with the new engines also.
Yes. Yeah. And around that time, Hormazd, you could actually get a 2 Ertiga or 2.5 Ertiga at the price of Innova. So,
Toyota, they just with impunity raised prices. I mean, people, you can even call them greedy. You can call them shameless. They're ripping you off. But, people will still buy Innova because it is just bulletproof, and as I keep saying, there is no price you can pay for reliability and durability. People are just willing to pay sometimes anything for it.
And gold standard in comfort, isn't it, Hormazd?
It is absolutely very good standard in comfort. I would say that as far as body on frames go, till today, the Innova is the gold standard. Body on frames do have some limitations, a high unsprung mass. You do feel a little bit of the lumpiness on certain surfaces at low speed. But honestly, as long distance cruisers, the kind of dynamics an Innova has, absolutely fantastic. Overall, a very flat ride, and above all, you feel very secure, very durable, can take all kinds of bad surfaces like most body on frames do. So it did have that advantage, so clearly. And as I said, we've had the Thar Rocks also, which has come out and body on frame. Such a huge improvement Mahindra has done on that. But again, that dynamic finesse of body on frame, even the Thar Rocks can't match the Crista.
Right.
So, this is years and years of evolution, of experience of Toyota. This is, the IMV platform. It's on the same platform. You've got the Hiluxes, Fortuners, everything. So they really know how to kind of tweak the dynamics. And probably it's the best riding ladder on frame, let's say a ladder chassis rather, body on frame chassis product that there is.
And when the new gen Innova High Cross was coming, there was a lot of debate, like yesteryears, whether Toyota will discontinue the existing Innova Crista, or will it continue and we have another MPV in the market. And I think that decision has proven to be...
Absolutely. I think it's very rare that they keep them going. But clearly, with diesel, there's such a high demand. The High Cross is not engineered to take a diesel. And but obviously the Crista diesel, it's in huge demand, largely for fleet as well.
Absolutely.
And I think Toyota learned their lesson after they discontinued the Qualis and got the Innova in at a much higher price. What that did was it allowed the Chevrolet Tavera at that time to thrive and survive. If they had kept both, they could have had both parts of the market, two distinct buyers altogether. And I think Toyota learned from that lesson, 20 years back or whenever it was discontinued, the Qualis. So I think with that kind of, in hindsight, they've said that, listen, the Crista is just such a workhorse, such a legend actually.
Absolutely.
It goes on and on that people still want it, so let's continue making it.
Absolutely. And I think for the first time this financial year, if I'm not wrong, company may potentially sell over 100,000 Innovas, both Crista and High Cross.
That's unbelievable.
Phenomenal value that brand generates for the company, and it's in a way a absolute cash cow, as you mentioned.
So I think absolute cash cow, but I think it's really also in a segment people have a lot of loyalty, and I think it's become a cash cow because of the phenomenal brand loyalty it has. And in the MPV segment and with MPV buyers, they're generally much more loyal than any other segment. They don't tend to switch loyalty so easily because they are pragmatic. They want the same vehicle. Going back to the Maruti Omni, also an MPV, MUV, whatever you call it at that time, it was on for 30 years. It went on. There were families which were on their 5th and 6th Omni.
Wow.
They would keep buying a new one after every 5, 6, 7 years, and they just kept on buying it. So amazing brand loyalty in the MPV segment. And I think one can understand why, because as I said, there's a different mindset over there.
Right.
They just want that peace of mind. They want practical transportation. They want to be able to take their families. They want the space, Yes, they're not so status conscious. It's a bit of been there, done that kind of a thing. They don't want to flaunt. They're not open to experimenting with newer brands. I would imagine typically older kind of buyers. So very different buyers. But I think what is happening, some of these are eating into the sedan space because of the practicality they kind of offer. And it's interesting to see that what I would say is an MPV body style in terms of hierarchy is probably in terms of, let's say market positioning, right close to the bottom. I mean, it's below a sedan as well, but people are still buying it.
Right. And, very interesting, Hormazd, that beyond practicality, with the launch of the second generation Ertiga and with the launch of XL6, then we saw Kia Carens coming into the market. Clearly, we started seeing a differentiated MPVs in the market, ones which are a little bit better on design, little bit better on road presence. We started seeing a lot of features being put into those cars.
That's right.
And I mean, Kia actually played a very significant role there, and XL6 also in a way supported that shift that was happening.
It did. It was like the premiumization of the MPV segment, if you want to put it that way. Yes. But I think, to be honest, a Carens buyer is not choosing necessarily between an XL6 or an Ertiga and a Carens. It might even be an SUV. Typically the questions we get, it could even be Alcazar and Carens. Carens being much, let's say more affordable, slightly in terms of stance. Smaller wheels. It's got a more MPV stance, but it's got that vital third row, which is very usable in the Carens, which others don't have, other SUVs don't have. So I think it's seen as a very affordable quasi SUV kind of a vehicle, and not necessarily a direct kind of, let's say, alternative to even an XL6, which is what I feel. Because, I mean, Kia being Kia, I remember they launched the Carens at a killer price. And I remember, talking to, I think it was TJ Park at that time. He literally said, I'm selling this. I'm making huge losses on this. So I said, why? He said, no, we have to, buy the market. Absolutely. Because, to get people's mindsets to change, you have to literally wrench, this decision or this buying decision out of their minds. And they did succeed. Carens still doing good numbers. But having said that, there's a new Carens coming. And from what I understand on that, it's got a higher bonnet. So a little bit more of road stance, and it's getting slightly more towards SUV-ish. Yeah, that's right. So clearly, that's the kind of buyer they have. Because I think they've also realized if they go too into Ertiga territory, they're going to come away with a bloody nose. And if they do go too high to Innova, same thing. And I think, Ketan, now we should talk about the other players who have all tried and failed. So many of them. There's a kind of graveyard of models.
Absolutely. Right from Chevrolet Enjoy to Renault Logi to Honda Mobilio to Mahindra Marazzo. Interesting, Hormazd, just heard from friends in the industry that last batch of Marazzo will be produced in the month of March. And then it's EOP. A lot of these models did not get the value proposition right.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned.
I think it's the value proposition they didn't get right. But in fairness also, I think the customer was hard to convince.
Right.
And some of them actually were good value and good products. But that isn't enough to convince someone to move away from something that's tried and tested.
Right.
For me, the Logi was a great product actually, with that K9K engine, superb space. I mean, as a diesel MPV, just ticked all the boxes. Yes, it compromised on the third row. It was a little cramped. They could have engineered it a bit better over there. It wasn't that comfortable at
the
back
third row.
Yeah. So, but again, no reason for it not to do so well. Same with the Mobilio. It drove beautifully, was quite comfortable. But again, there was no reason why someone should buy an Ertiga over it, except the fact that Maruti, low running costs, all these factors which come into play into a MPV buyers, So, and I think for me, the Marazzo came with so much promise.
Right.
That was actually trying to take on the Innova. It looked a lot like the old generation Innova. I think the design to me was a bit of a disaster, because really when it came out, it already looked dated. And it came out at a time when the new Innova with a fresh new grille, sharper kind of design came out, and the Marazzo looked quite, ungainly and dated by then. And I think, again, it came with a 1.5 diesel, good diesel, by its cubic capacity, a great 1.5 diesel. But for a Marazzo, probably not. I mean, it's the same diesel today in smaller compact cars, like the 3XO. But to put that in a Marazzo, clearly with it loaded, especially going uphill, it struggled. And that's what we said in our road test as well.
Right.
And Marazzo actually had a good ride, good interiors, but, it was heavy, costly for Mahindra as well. It was a kind of a hybrid body on frame, monocoque kind of vehicle, which they tried to do. This was developed out of their North America operations.
Yes.
So really it was a solid, well-engineered product. And from what I understand, gave very little trouble out of the box. But it just didn't click with the customer because, it lacks basic things like power, which a lot of people want from their MPVs. And even, 1.5 versus a 2.2 from Toyota at that time just didn't cut it.
Right. I mean, and that's where the name MPV, multi-purpose vehicle, it has to hit every potential box that a consumer of an MPV wants it. If it's like, I heard stories of how Enjoy was cheap. I heard stories of how Mobilio interiors were not really up to the mark when it came out. people root the design of Logi. I mean, these are the feedback that we got from the market. With regards to Marazzo, it was the potential challenge of not being able to take uphill, but the rest of the models really hit the sweet spot. And one model that we forgot speaking about, Hormazd, is the Renault Triber.
That's done well.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. In fact, I think that Ketan, to me, it's been a absolute triumph of brilliant design. I mean, to package in a fairly spacious, 3 rows of seating within sub 4 meter is actually, just design brilliance. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really.
All credit to late Gerard Detourbe, who did a phenomenal job.
He did a job, but it's the Renault design team which had done this. Van den Acker, and also it was really a great job. But again, just running with that BR10 engine is quite underpowered in that sense. They should have given it the 1 liter turbo, the HR10, which they still haven't done. But they know the cost will shoot up dramatically. So I think they've taken a good call. I think there's a new Triber on the anvil. So I think the Triber actually has been an outlier and done what others should be copying. I am surprised no one else has done a sub 4 meter MPV. I think and they've really ruled the roost. And Triber has given them some pretty decent volumes. But again, Renault being Renault, they've not invested enough in the product. Life cycle planning for the Triber has just gone through it's really tragic.
Absolutely.
Because that's a real winner.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's something which they should have worked on.
One company you can definitely bet on, Hormazd, and something that we keep an eye on, future products of each of these companies. You can expect Maruti to come out with something. There were rumors of Maruti coming out with the longest Wagoner, the 3-row Wagoner that they have in the Japanese market. And when we look at the future product plan, definitely there's a 3-row subcompact potential option that Maruti may eventually come out with. Clearly, they see value for affordable buyers who are family buyers.
Exactly. And you cannot underestimate the value of 3-row seating. 3-row seating is maximized in an MPV just by its body style. I mean, let's say a short bonnet area, which you won't have in an SUV. So you maximize the cabin space, a little bit more of an upright rear. So you again make maximum room with the cabin space. So MPVs are, optimize the 3-row seating better than any other body style. The other body style only being an SUV. But and I think that value is there, especially today when families like to travel together. The car is back very much as a loved kind of thing in the family, and people like to travel together. So I think clearly we will see this. I think the 3-row factor plays a huge role in MPV demand.
Absolutely, Hormazd. And I think what happened post-COVID, with a lot of people actually wanting to go out for intercity drive, with roads improving, it's absolute value from taking your family around on a weekend. Then it's also absolute value for the fleet buyer. So in a way, it addresses so many different ends of the market that post-COVID we actually saw the segment growing from 7% of the market to 10% of the market. And looking at the current market environment as well, where others are struggling to sell, MPVs are still in demand. And what's interesting to me is that there are different powertrains there. I mean, you have a CNG, you have a diesel, you have a hybrid, you have a petrol, and very soon we're also going to get an electric MPV in the market.
That's right. I mean, we already have them. I mean, BYD are already there with it.
Right.
Small way,
Right.
the E9. So, but I think absolutely. I think we'll be seeing Maruti launch its first proper electric MPV.
Yes.
So I think clearly, again, EVs lend themselves to 3-row seating in many ways because, the packaging is there. Clearly, you have issues with high floor and things like that. But I think that's another segment of electric three-row MPVs that is, going to kind of grow the MPV market even further.
Absolutely, and the segment has been growing. It is likely to grow further. We're gonna get more options in the market, more powertrain options, and I think with the designs getting better, with the interiors getting better, with the aesthetic feel getting better, I think a lot more first-time buyers may potentially look at that segment.
Right.
It's usually a second car in the family or either a replacement, but
Right.
increasingly now, I was talking to friends in the industry, and we are hearing of first-time car buyers actually getting into the MPV space. So.
But an MPV or designing an MPV, even selling an MPV, it's a kind of a skill or an art not every OEM has, not every manufacturer has. And clearly we've seen people who have, some are in it or you're either in it or you're not in it.
Absolutely.
So clearly those who are in it, it's their strength.
Absolutely.
So you've got Toyota, you've got Maruti, and you've got Kia fundamentally.
Yes.
Actually, see, everyone else is not in it.
Absolutely.
Because they haven't been able to crack it. So probably one of the toughest segments to crack.
Absolutely.
See, look, SUV, everyone comes in. You put in an SUV almost like, I wouldn't say guaranteed success, but that is the go-to body style to come in and have some chance of, fighting it out in the market.
Right.
Tata not in the MPV segment. I don't think they never were. Mahindra tried. I mean, don't forget that the Mahindra Voyager in the 90s.
Right.
With Mitsubishi Mechanicals.
Right.
So it was a Mitsubishi vehicle, and a van. And that really, again, didn't do well. Again, they failed with the Marazzo. Xylo was sort of MPV-ish again, failed miserably. Badly engineered product as well, because it was, based on a Bolero platform, which was, really not their kind of superior tech in terms of what they had for Scorpio at that point. I think Honda, again, disaster in the MPV segment.
Hyundai also tried, but then did not go ahead with it.
Exactly. So Hyundai also have stayed away. Kia have kind of taken a solid bet on it. In fact, they are the kind of MPV torchbearer in the group. So you've got the Carens and you've got the Carnival as well. What they're trying with both of these. So yeah, really, I mean, not easy to, let's say, make a success in the MPV segment. And those who do, they really enjoy the success because, very few players. And as you said, it's a growing market. And really, I think it's a segment that's made Toyota.
Absolutely. And happy to see that there's buyer at every price point, right? From a Triber to a Velfire.
Exactly.
Starting at about 6 lakh rupees price point to almost a crore. So I mean, as long as you deliver what the consumer wants in that specific segment, there will be takers. But yes, it's a very hard task from an engineering point of view to get everything right.
No, and even just, to be able to sell an MPV, I mean, that's one of the reasons why Nissan didn't do, its own version of the Triber.
Yeah.
They done it with all the other body styles.
Right.
Kiger, Magnite, Terrano, Duster, all that. They've done the badge engineering jobs. I think they burnt their fingers with the Datsun Go Plus.
Absolutely.
Which they tried, which was, again, wasn't quite an MPV. It was more like a stretched hatchback. But, for various reasons, it didn't do well. Should have done well. It was well.
And even their endeavor with Ashok Leyland with the Evalia.
That's right. Even with the Evalia, absolutely right. The Evalia, again, very different to sliding doors, didn't do well. I think that was actually a great vehicle.
Yeah.
Whilst this Datsun Go, really the third row was unusable. It was just there for namesake. But so really not easy to crack this segment. But the scoop is that now Nissan is looking at doing its own version of the Triber. That's what we hear. We don't know when that will come, given the problems Nissan is facing right now, what Nissan's future is globally. But I think this is also on the cards.
Absolutely. And Hormazd, to me, this space is a space that is ruled by two big horses, Maruti and Toyota. It's likely to cross about 400,000 vehicles this year. Maruti is likely to cross 200,000, almost 50% share. Toyota over 100,000 vehicles. So clearly these two Japanese companies, the alliance partners, are really ruling the roost from an affordable end of the market to 1.2.
Absolutely. So clearly what we've seen is, the MPV segment, actually, it's not very competitive. You've just got these two players ruling the roost, and as you said, at either end, they literally bookend the segment, and you've got the Carens in between, actually doing some decent numbers. The only one in a space where everyone else had failed. But otherwise, it's quite astonishing that every other segment is so competitive. Compact SUVs, mid-size SUVs. I mean, of course, SUVs are exploding and everyone and his uncle is launching an SUV, but everyone thinks twice about an MPV. So a very unserved kind of segment because you've just got very few players in it.
But beyond the mainstream, Hormazd, now you started seeing action in the luxury end of the market, isn't it? With MG. With
Yeah,
Lexus.
that's right. That's right. I mean, if you look at the luxury end, also failed, and Mercedes in particular failed at the R Class, the MB100, which was some SsangYong derived vehicle, and you had the V Class, which again we thought had a lot of potential, but again that failed quite badly. But I think they didn't give enough luxury there. It's quite strange. In that segment, you want all the luxury possible because the kind of buyer over there is just looking at the most comfortable and comfy commuter. Almost 90%, 95% of them chauffeur driven. And I think that's where I think the Velfire has been a huge success. It's been an eye-opener for many. And you saw Kia also with the Carnival trying to get some of the Velfire's market share by, coming with a more expensive Carnival. They don't mind low volumes, but at that price, there's a business case for it.
And they want to offer everything now.
Exactly. And now MG is looking at coming in with the first kind of luxury MPV with the M9.
Right.
Yeah, so Ketan, I think really interesting that MPVs have grown. It's been as we said earlier, it's a segment no one really notices. Right. It's not that really sexy segment like SUVs or even sedans for that matter. It's one of those very lowbrow kind of segments. But right. I think, it's growing. I think the way the kind of technology also is evolving in terms of powertrain and all, I think CNG, for example, lending itself to more and more people going in for MPVs fits over there. I think, diesel has gone out of the market. I think it's only really Toyota and Carens and Kia which have diesel powertrains for MPVs. And I think, despite that, the segment is still growing. So I think practicality, a hugely important factor in this segment.
And also you give value to the Indian buyers, they will buy.
Exactly. I think it's all about value. That's what Indian buyers want. And on that note, we wrap up this episode of Deep Drive. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Do tune in again next Saturday at 11 a.m. And so that you don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.